Once upon a time, a bunch of bankers figured out how to destroy the global economy with paperwork. In the mid-2000s, Wall Street discovered they could hand out mortgages like Halloween candy, bundle them into shiny financial products, slap a totally safe sticker on them, and sell them to everyone from pension funds to governments. It was like wrapping garbage in gold foil and convincing the world it was chocolate. For a few years, everyone was happy. Housing prices skyrocketed, brokers got rich, and your neighbor's dog somehow qualified for a mortgage. Yes, that actually happened. But here is the catch. Eventually, people had to pay those mortgages back, and spoiler, they couldn't. The whole system was built on lies, greed, and the assumption that house prices would never go down. Spoiler number 2, they did. When the music stopped, millions lost their homes, jobs, and savings. Meanwhile, the very banks that caused it all, they got bailed out with your money. So today, let's break down the 2008 crash, like you are 5, but angry, because honestly, you should be. The entire global economy was a giant game of Jenga, and the main blocks were houses. Not real houses, but pieces of paper that said people owed money on houses. These are called mortgages. It's basically a super long-term IOU you sign to get a home. Now, a bank used to just give you the loan and patiently wait 30 years for you to pay it back with interest. Boring, but stable. But Wall Street looked at this and said, ugh, waiting is for peasants. We want our money now. So they invented a financial superweapon called a mortgage-backed security, or MBS. Here is the 5-year-old version. Imagine a bank gives out 100 mortgages. That's 100 streams of monthly payments coming in. Instead of waiting, the bank takes all those future IOUs, throws them into a giant financial blender, and purees them into a smoothie. This smoothie is the MBS. Then, they pour this smoothie into a fancy glass, call it a AAA-rated investment-grade beverage, and sell slices of it to investors around the world pension funds. And other banks, your weird uncle's retirement account. The bank gets its money back immediately, plus fees for making the smoothie, and the investor gets the promise of all those future mortgage payments. It's a win-win, except it was a lose-lose because the smoothie was absolutely poisoned. The banks and ratings agencies knew it. They were taking mortgages given to people with no jobs, no income, and no assets, the infamous ninja loans, and wrapping them up in that shiny AAA-rated paper. They were selling a mystery box, labeled definitely not poop to the entire planet, and then acting utterly shocked when the entire thing started to reek. They weren't selling gold, they were selling garbage, and they just kept spraying it with financial perfume until no one could smell the rot anymore. So you have got this new, horrifyingly efficient machine for turning garbage into gold. What do? You need more garbage, a lot more. The entire global investment world was now hooked on these delicious mortgage-backed security smoothies, and they were screaming for another hit. The demand was absolutely insane. This created a financial feedback loop from hell. To keep the smoothie machine running, banks needed a constant, ever-increasing supply of mortgages. So they started handing out loans like they were free samples at a Costco. The old boring rules of lending like, requiring a job or a down payment were for cowards. This was the era of the ninja loan. No income, no job, no assets, no problem. Here is $500,000. If you could fog a mirror, you could get a mortgage. They were giving them to dead people, to your dog, to a potted plant with a vaguely human-sounding name. Loan officers went checkers. They were cheerleaders, paid on commission to push as much debt out the door as humanly possible. Why would they care if it got paid back? They'd already sold the risk to some pension fund in Norway, and everyone was getting rich. Home prices only ever went up, right? It was a national religion. So regular people were flipping houses, using their skyrocketing home equity like a personal ATM to buy jet skis and granite countertops. Wall Street bros were buying literal solid gold toilet brushes with their bonus checks. It was the world's most extravagant party, and the music was the non-stop printing of mortgage paperwork. The entire economy was high on its own supply, convinced that this time the laws of financial gravity had been officially repealed. But all parties built on a foundation of pure delusion have to end. And this one ended not with a whimper, but with a planet-shattering kaboom. The first domino was something brutally simple: interest rates. A lot of those ninja loans had teaser rates, super low payments for the first 2 years that then exploded into unaffordable amounts. The clock finally struck midnight. Suddenly, millions of people who could barely afford the cheap payments were staring at a bill that had doubled, and they couldn't just sell their house for a profit to get out of it anymore, because the insane artificial demand had finally run out. The music stopped, all at once, and there weren't enough chairs. So they defaulted, they stopped paying. The first few defaults were a blip, then it was a wave, then it was a tsunami. Remember those delicious mortgage smoothies? Turns out the main ingredient was toxic waste. The steady stream of mortgage payments that every single investor was relying on dried up. The entire global network of bets on the US housing market vaporized overnight. The fancy financial products weren't just losing value, they were completely impossible to price. No one knew which bundle of loans was 10% garbage and which was 90% garbage. So the entire system seized up like an engine with a gallon of sugar in its gas tank. Banks stopped trusting each other because every other bank was potentially sitting on $1 trillion garbage smoothie. The game of financial hot potato was over, and everyone was left holding a radioactive potato. The entire global financial system, the very machine that moves money around the world, was having a full-blown existential crisis, and it was about to take everyone's money down with it. And then silence. The greatest economic party of a generation ended with the equivalent of a financial hydrogen bomb. The fallout was both instantaneous and agonizingly slow. First, the banks froze. Since nobody knew who was holding the toxic garbage, lending between institutions completely stopped. The entire global economy, which runs on credit, seized up overnight. Then came the bailouts. The very architects of the crisis marched into Washington, white-knuckled and sweating, and explained that if they were allowed to fail, they would take every single retirement account, every small business, and the entire global financial system down with them. It wasn't a request, it was a hostage situation. So the government, with your money, paid the ransom. Hundreds of billions of dollars were funneled to these institutions to keep them afloat. The irony was so thick you could build a vault door with it. The punishment for catastrophic failure was a taxpayer-funded life raft. Meanwhile, on Main Street, the punishment was foreclosure. While the CEOs who oversaw the apocalypse were negotiating their golden parachutes, millions of regular people were getting eviction notices. They lost their homes, their jobs evaporated as businesses couldn't get loans, and their life savings were decimated as the stock market cratered. The lesson was crystal clear. Capitalism for the poor, socialism for the rich. You face the consequences of your actions. They get a blank check from the public and a bonus for attention. The system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed to protect the people at the top and sacrifice everyone else. So what did we learn? Did we break up the too big to fail banks? Did we throw the masters of the universe in orange jumpsuits? Of course not. We got paperwork. The Dodd-Frank Act was a 1,000-page monument to good intentions and bureaucratic complexity. It was designed to make the system safer, and in some ways it did. But it was like playing a never-ending game of financial whack-a-mole. Wall Street's lawyers and financial engineers spent years finding the loopholes, creating new, even more bizarre financial instruments in the shadows. The risk didn't vanish, it just got repackaged and shuffled into different corners of the market. The fundamental problem that massive banks could hold the global economy hostage was not solved. They are bigger now than they were in 2008. You can see the exact same patterns everywhere today. The crypto boom and bust was a hyperspeed, unregulated replay of the same greed and delusion. The housing market is once again on a terrifying tear, fueled by cheap debt and a desperate fear of missing out. We are not reliving 2008. We are living in its sequel. The characters are different. The setting is slightly better Wi-Fi, but the plot is exactly the same. We learned the mechanics of the crash, but we learned absolutely nothing about the greed that causes it. History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes, and this rhyme is a profanity. So the next time you see some inexplicable economic boom, just remember, someone somewhere is already packaging up the garbage, looking for a shiny new box to put it in, and a greater fool to sell it to. The only thing that changes is the branding. It's easy to talk about the 2008 crash in terms of numbers, charts, and fancy acronyms. Trillions lost, GDP down, X million foreclosures. So let's be perfectly clear. The 2008 financial crisis wasn't a natural disaster. It wasn't an act of God or some unpredictable market event. It was a meticulously engineered catastrophe, built one liar's loan at a time. It was a pyramid scheme constructed by the world's most powerful institutions, fueled by willful ignorance and outright fraud, and then sold to the entire planet as a safe investment. The system didn't fail. It performed exactly as designed to privatize the profits during the good times and socialize the losses during the collapse. The banks got the bonuses. The politicians got the talking points. And you, the taxpayer, got the bill and a front row seat to the greatest heist in human history. One where they stole your future, your stability, and then had the audacity to ask you to pay for the privilege. The real lesson of 2008 isn't about subprime mortgages or collateralized debt obligations. It's much simpler. The house always wins. And if the house is about to lose, it just rewrites the rules and makes you pay for its chips. So don't forget, don't forgive, and above all, stay angry.
To the rest of you, the non-believers, the underachievers, the tweet and deleters, you guys make me sick to my stomachs, fam. Honestly, if you guys want to look in my eyes, you guys want to do something? You guys, that's what I thought. No, that's what I thought. That's what I